So Barak, the idea of global economy, I think we are all in line, and we all agree on that. But there is a limit to convergence, and that's basically what I've just highlighted. And interestingly enough, it's usually the powerful jurisdictions that argue for convergence, which includes basically you aligning with them rather than meeting a middle ground. But that's a completely different topic. Second, when we speak about non-economic arguments, it's not an open list. So I would say, if you want to focus on something that is interesting and relevant, focus on fairness. So not about national security and things like that. Focus on something that is close enough to the consumer well-being principle, and think about how this plays out. And I would say that if you insulate the antitrust authorities from any values, what you end up is with an antitrust regime that does not really serve the consumer. Because consumer welfare is more than just surviving in an efficient environment. Welfare has several dimensions, and it's true that efficiency is a key, but sometimes there will be other societal values that you would like to advance, such as fairness, and you might say overall efficiency might be undermined, but I think this is a fair outcome. Now, I have completely accepted, some or many of you might disagree with that, but that's a norm. That's a societal norm, and if you have a norm like that, maybe you're better off in a society that actually advances a package that includes a fair share to consumers, rather than in an economy that advances something that looks at something that turns towards the efficiency argument, the surplus, and maybe protects less some of the consumer interests. Independence of the competition agency, I don't think there is any doubt about it. The fact that you might consider fairness or privacy, which is something that very controversial in Europe, does not mean that you're not independent. If anything, there is some empirical research that suggests that the US authorities are more exposed to lobbying, and decision-making in the US is less independent in that extent. So the fact that the US law seems to be so narrow, you could argue, is true, but did not immune US authorities from some sort of capture. And I'm not talking, of course, about the individuals. I mean, no doubt that the individuals are completely on task, but I'm talking about the ability to capture the overall debate, the ability to capture the discussion, and to promote certain economic policies that are very narrow, seemingly pure, but actually promote something, some sort of political choice. The argument that competition agencies are not set to deal with values, this is exactly some sort of procedural argument that seems to be so simple and determines the outcome of a policy. So this is me saying, but all I know is math, so don't ask me to also teach my kids about values. No, I mean, it's true, it's easier to deal with numbers, but if that argument is an argument that undermines the scope of the law, there is at the very least a viable argument against it, but your mandate is wider, make use of it. And it's true, and also you will find it in jurisdictions across Europe, that you have ongoing pressure from competition agencies saying, we don't want to deal with that. And I accept that, it's so much easier to deal with numbers, but you can see how the wider society is waking up and saying, we understand that you don't want to deal with that, but the law demands that you deal with that, please protect us. And one last minute, the argument on less economic arguments. These are really controversial. I'm not saying for a second that this is an easy area. You have Germany, the Bundeskartellamt took privacy and used it as a parameter of competition. The important thing is it took a value that is relevant, but it looked at it through competition goggles. So it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. It did not ditch all the principles of making sure that you do not chill competition, do not chill innovation, make sure that you keep all the incentives intact. What it did is look at quality degradation. It looked at the fact that although seemingly you have choice, in reality, so it is an actually economic analysis, in reality, users do not have choice. If Facebook tells them you either join or not, this is not really a choice for a teenager, because not joining means that you are locked in a dark room for the rest of your life, as far as they are concerned. So they have to join, and if by joining they agree for data to be merged from the 3 key platforms, then this is the downgrade of their quality. Or you can view it through excessiveness. This is excessive data gathering, whichever way you deal with it. Interestingly, the Bundeskartellamt structured the decision very narrowly. And the reason it structured the decision narrowly, there is some political reason behind it, but it's dealing with German law, and it is done in a way that it will not create shockwaves throughout Europe. You can take the decision and use it, but it is done in a very intelligent way. Another decision that is sometimes argued as not less economic is the Google decision with self-favoritism, which is a big deal. But again, if you look at the Commission decision, it is all about behavioral economics. It is all about the ability to create friction, the ability to really impact on your decision. It is all about whether competition is a click away or not. The fact that I can manipulate certain things and do them very lightly and yet create a lot of impact, create friction, and favor my own operation. Again, if you don't have a duty to deal, then you don't have the refusal to supply, then you don't have maybe self-favoritism. So you can see how this comes from a line of case law and theories of harm that are somewhat European. And I accept that many people might think it does not make sense. If you're one of the companies that are now basically downgraded and cannot compete, for you, it does make sense. Because for you, without that, you have no chance of surviving on that market. Thanks.
Yeah.